So this is going to be video number 2 in my series on Orania as a micronation and the concept of white reservations being the last hope for the preservation of authentic Americanism, Anglo-Saxon style Americanism, which means, Anglo-Dutch, German, etc. The real Americanism of the people that came here and their descendants from the colonial times, and onward, how the colonial diaspora that merged to become white Americans, and of course that includes Native Americans and Black Americans because their genes are in there as well, and I'm going to show that in when I go over the genetic makeup of American whites. So the concept of the Volksstaat, I wanted to go over what a Volksstaat was because it means people state. So the Volksstaat, now this is the other thing, Afrikaans is considered a legitimate language in and of itself. I think that American English should be considered a language in and of itself, because if you compare American English is a unique language that makes use of a lot of Native American, Spanish, Latin, Greek, and of course Native American and various African languages, as well as a lot of other languages that are in America, as well as American slang terms. Now, if you compare American English to, say, British English, you will notice that American English is very straightforward to the point, whereas British English sounds like a bunch of wishy-washy, pretentious baby talk bullshit. So that's what you got to look at. So the Volksstaat, which means people state, would have been a state for the Afrikaners, the Boers, So I'm going to move on. I'm going to try and go through this quickly because I do have a lot more to cover than I thought I did when I was looking at what I have to cover. So this is from the Indian news channel Gravitas, and it's going to talk about Orania. Now, what I find funny is during the BLM insurrection that nobody's calling an insurrection, when BLM rioted, set off all of our major cities on fire, and began defacing public property, one of the statues they defaced and tore down was a statue of the Indian civil rights activist and reformer Mahatma Gandhi. Now, Mahatma Gandhi was a pedophile, a pervert, well, a potential pedophile, and a potential pervert. But the point is, Mahatma Gandhi only made one comment that was negative about black folks. Now, after that, Mahatma Gandhi recanted and worked with Nelson Mandela, and was actually imprisoned with Nelson Mandela for his role in trying to desegregate South Africa. Of course, the BLMers are not like the Islamic folks where they believe what's last comes first, as in what's later in the Quran is more important than what's before in the Quran or whatever. But what it is with the BLMers is they just believe, oh my God, Gandhi said something mean, therefore Gandhi is an unrepentant racist, and therefore we must deface his statue and tear down his statue. But let's see what Gravitas has to say about Orania. And I guarantee you it's probably not going to be positive. I did not watch this, but of course it's very popular to dislike anything that has to do with white people having equal rights to non-white people.
From South Africa. It's been 3 decades since South Africa abolished apartheid, a system of racially segregating black people from white people.
Now, mind you, this is from India, which still has a caste system. Just pointing that out. Just pointing that out.
The country got rid of it in the 1990s, but the spirit of apartheid is still alive in some places. One of them is Orania, a remote town in the country's north, often called the last outpost of apartheid. Why? Because Orania is a whites-only town Black people cannot
Again,
live or work here.
remember,
Every job.
this chick lives in India where the caste system still exists, but somehow nobody's talking about that. And I even think, I'm not against the caste system in India. I don't think it's an intelligent system. I believe, water finds its own level in a lot of ways, but, the caste system is not necessarily evil either, but the caste system is far more belligerent towards people of lower castes than apartheid was towards people of different racial groups. Now, moving on.
Is reserved for the whites. Every task performed by white people. And yet the residents of this town insist they're not racist. Here's a report.
It's not racist to preserve who you are.
Welcome to Orania, a remote farming town in South Africa's Northern Cape. It prints its own money, runs its own banks, has its own holidays, and manages its own affairs. Sounds like the perfect township to relocate, right? Well, hold your horses. To enter Orania, you have to qualify on certain parameters. The foremost is the color of your skin. It has to be white, because Orania is a whites-only town. The uniqueness is too obvious to ignore. Wherever you go in this township, you will only find Afrikaners. White people with Dutch ancestry. They do all the work, from playing the piano at the church to reading out the Bible to believers, to running the kitchen.
What you will notice is they are trying to negatively portray Christianity. Did you notice that? By trying to lump Christianity in with racism because white people are doing it. I just thought I'd point that out.
To reading out the Bible to believers, to running the kitchen at a restaurant, to even gardening at orchards. All jobs, big or small, are reserved for white people.
Now, what's odd is when the United States was 90% white, believe it or not, I mean, this might sound odd, but in a country that was majority white, the majority of the jobs in the majority white country of the United States were done by white people. Did that make the majority white United States inherently racist? Many people think so, but no, it just so happens that it was majority white. Is Iceland racist because Iceland is almost 100% white? I don't think so. But who am I? I don't know.
But the residents of this town insist that they're not racist.
We are from Africa, that's why we call ourselves Afrikaners. We want to remain here. We also want to retain our identity. Now, to retain one's identity is not a racist impulse. We wanted to retain our identity against the English or the British. Now, to retain one's identity is not a racist impulse. We wanted to retain our identity against the English or the British imperialism also, and they're even whiter than we are, much whiter.
Orania is often dubbed as the last outpost of apartheid, a system of institutionalized racial segregation.
Again, from a country that still recognizes a caste system.
South Africa abolished apartheid in the 1990s, but the legacy lives on in Orania. In fact, the township was founded by the son-in-law of Hendrik Verwoerd, South Africa's former prime minister, who's considered to be the architect of apartheid. Verwoerd's bust lies at the museum in this township, serving as a reminder of his beliefs. As for Nelson Mandela, the man credited with ending apartheid, the people of Orania don't really hold him in high regard.
I don't think that I can see him as a hero because he's part of...
Now consider the fact that Nelson Mandela was a terrorist and that his organization would burn people alive and were highly funded by the USSR.
Whole package. Mandela is part of a whole package, and as Mandela, all the other leaders within the ANC make a contribution to create some policy that is, from our viewpoint, not necessarily for the best of this country.
Mandela is not a hero, they say. And they're not racist, they insist. So what is this town all about? An attempt to protect their culture.
Yes.
This township is legal as per South Africa's constitution. An article defends its right to self-determination. But Orania's ambitions could soon spell trouble. Because the people here say their next goal is the creation of an Afrikaner republic. A white-only autonomous region within South Africa.
There needs to be.
Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
WION is now available.
So I'm obviously not going to put you people through the whole 13 minutes of this video. I don't think so. Maybe I will. But we're going to start with this. This is people that spent 24 hours in Orania. So right here.
Orania. So this is the entrance to the village. This is Orania West or East, I don't know.
This is the residential area.
This is the residential area of Orania. So it's behind us here. Here is the main road through Orania. As you can see, there's trucks and all sorts of things. It's a provincial road, so a lot of people come through. And then all the way on the other side are businesses and shops and sort of the main business district of Orania. So we're going to head into the residential side, see the school, see the monuments, and hopefully meet a few people along the way. So interestingly, apologies for the light. I mean, we are real journalists here. Byron,
Ground floor.
have you noticed every single person waves?
Every person we walk past or drive past, always like, hello. Yeah, it's very, very, very friendly. Far more than I was expecting.
Now, one of the things you'll notice in, like, for example, if you go to small town Pennsylvania, places that are heavy on the Mennonites, you'll notice, which are also of Pennsylvania Dutch, which is German, Scandinavian, Dutch, etc., ancestry, everybody is very polite. Everybody is, I mean, usually except for the Amish, but the Amish they pretty much keep to themselves. They're still fairly polite. They give you, basic respect. But, if you go to small town Pennsylvania, especially the areas that are loaded with Mennonites, the people are very polite, very welcoming, and they want to say hi. If you get a flat tire, in fact, I have an experience when I was a youth. My mom had gotten a flat tire in an area that was heavy on the Mennonites, and somebody actually offered to tow us with their tractor to an automotive place because we did not have a spare. Instead, we just left the car there and got a spare, left the car on the side of the road, got the tire, got a tire put on the tire, and I changed the tire. But the point is, that's the kind of people. Now, if you have an issue in, say, suburban Pennsylvania, where I live right now, you're not going to get any help. Now, you might have 20 years ago or 30 years, probably more like 30 or 40 years ago when I was a kid. But my point is, the demography of the towns have changed, the attitude of the towns have changed, and I think that people have a right toward the ability to preserve who they are. And if you want to live in a town where everybody's polite and everybody's helpful and everybody works together, such as in Orania or in the areas that are heavy on the Pennsylvania Dutch or, small town Pennsylvania or small town wherever, I think that you should have a right to preserve that as a reservation, as a preservation of American culture.
I was expecting. I thought that, foreigners weren't welcome here.
Yeah, so everyone waves, everyone says hello, everyone speaks Afrikaans. They speak a bit of
Well, some
English.
people speak English with us when we speak it.
Yeah, but they're very polite. Everyone's very polite. It's a nice change from most of South Africa. So we are still here in the suburbs, but what would you realize about very polite.
Now notice that's a change from most of South Africa. That's a change from most of South Africa.
They're very polite. Everyone's very polite. It's a nice change from most of South Africa. So we are still here in the suburbs, but what you realize about Orania is there's no richness here. There's no opulence. There's no sense that this is an inclusive, exclusive enclave. The average house is fairly modest. The average car is fairly modest. You don't see Range Rovers or anything like that. It really seems to be a community of working / middle class people trying to make things work. Nothing more, nothing less. There's really no sense of elitism or snobbery whatsoever.
No, you would typically find a suburb that's a Gulf suburb. The houses there are more opulent than the houses here. This is a distinctly low to middle class housing estate. But according to the architects of Orania, that's by design. And the reason for that is because they're not trying to create an exclusive bossy enclave. They're creating an enclave of working class South Africans that are just trying to get along and find their sense of order in the chaos that is the modern South Africa.
Now keep in mind with the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone and all this crap, could you imagine if BLM founded a town like this? In fact, we don't have much to imagine. The United States bought the colony of Liberia, and the United States built the colony of Liberia with housing and everything like that, and helped them set up their system of governance, which is based on the United States system of governance. And let's just say Liberia does not look like the United States. In fact, it looks far less like the United States than Orania does. Okay? Orania does look like a typical suburb of the United States from back in the 80s or early 90s. I think that's obvious.
In front of us is the industrial area.
That's it.
And how many factories and businesses are in the industrial area?
You'll see now there's quite a few. I don't know exactly how many, but there's quite a few. This first place, this is actually amazing. This guy started off with absolutely nothing quite a few years ago. He employs a lot of Oranians at this stage. He's got a magnificent transport company, a huge fleet. He sells building material. And of course, I think his recipe was neatness and hard work. And if you look at it and you think of it, it's a transport company. It's always as neat as a pin. And then there's a few companies here on the right hand side. This is like a hardware store. There's lawyers here, estate agents, there's a mechanic inside. You name it, there's quite a few places. Once we go past the entrance, you'll see how many places are inside. Community services are even there. A place that specializes in paint. This bathroom place. It's huge. And then here we have a place that works with steel. That's Rembrandt Steel. He chose the name because he feels he's an artist as far as steel is concerned. He uses a laser and he does a pretty good job.
The next step we took is we put up a solar installation.
So where is the solar farm?
It's just in town, but it's on the north side of town.
How many panels roughly?
There's 1,190.
So they're pioneers in green energy, okay? Consider this. They're working in a communitarian fashion. They're pioneers of green energy. The liberals would love this place. This is where all of America could have been by now. I'm just saying, if we would have retained our unique American culture.
1,890 solar panels.
So just under 1,900.
Yes.
What, they're 450 watt?
Well, 445. So it's 841 kilowatt peak.
Okay, so you're just under a megawatt.
Yes, just under a megawatt. This plant, together with the roof installations, generate approximately 30% of Orania's energy needs, electricity needs. Now the next next phase we're planning, we first wanted to just upscale our generation, but the next phase we're planning is because of Eskom's troubles, Eskom's death spiral. It's a bad word, but that's what's going on. Our next phases were they were brought forward. We were planning them later along
Your off-grid plans had to be brought forward.
Yes, because
is
so
you just told us about this last night. You said your next phase was to have the solar panels, but now you're shifting that to storage and then doing the panels.
Yes,
because
we're putting on. We plan to put on a 4 megawatt hour battery, and the main purpose is to get rid ourselves from load shedding from 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night.
What's the economic hours?
Yes, that's where production, building, living, cooking, swatting for the students and studying for the students, and a lot of the entrepreneurs is doing their admin at night, at night time, and if we can sort that hours out, it would be a huge step forward for economy in our town, and it's a huge contrast to the rest of South Africa.
So Orania may be a small town, but it has quite a lot of things, as evidenced by this board right here. So you see a sport complex, a swimming pool complex, a monument, sport fields, all sorts of things.
That's a very traditional Afrikaans sport. And this is where a hostel where the students stay. It can accommodate about 220 students.
We bought this house, so I'm planting things for whenever I manage to move here.
Oh, lovely. So this is your holiday home in Orania?
I rent it out, and I just visit here. I'm staying with my dad.
Yeah.
He is retired here 25 years ago, and then I work over here.
Lovely. So what would you say the big differences between Pretoria and Orania are?
Crime is a big factor, I think. I got about 7 messages from the armed response in Pretoria this morning when I switched on my cell phone, and another 10 from my wife on her way to work. So yeah, it's a different atmosphere. You feel safe.
Yeah, it's very chilled out here. I mean, we've noticed already walking around that people are walking the streets and waving at us. We're just commenting it on camera, and so it just seems everybody's like really
chilled and a bit more laid back.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
So is the goal for you to retire here one day?
Yeah, I'm also farming pecan nuts from Pretoria, managing it from a distance. So I use all my leave to do some farming, to catch up on whatever's gone wrong the past 2 or 3 months. Whatever's gone wrong the past 2 or 3 months.
Sorry about the wind, but we are literally at the top. This is a hill to monuments, and well, basically it's they're building monuments and statues to people who sort of determine what Orania is actually about. So behind me is where we came from. This is the main sort of suburb that we were walking around earlier. There's the church right behind me over there, and over there is more of Orania, but that's sort of the town itself. It's really not big. As far as I understand, it's about 1.5 to 2,000 people living here, and what can I say? It's really peaceful. It really is peaceful.
Trees-wise, we've planted more than 30,000 trees since we arrived here.
But I believe you've done that in a bit to try and terraform the place and make it more eco-friendly to...
Yes, absolutely.
Now that's the thing, is one of the things I very much admire about the People's Republic of China is the fact that they're terraforming the Tibetan Plateau, and they're working with Groasis, which I believe is actually an American company, but the Chinese Communist Party has been working to make great strides at terraforming the Tibetan Plateau to help stop landslides. They also have greenhouses. Tibetans are actually getting green vegetables at wintertime and stuff like that they need to retain their health and get healthy. And Orania, they're terraforming their area, because if you remember from the previous video, it's not a great area to be in. It's a pretty desolate area, but in my opinion, we should be using permaculture and terraforming on every arid region in the United States. There's no reason why we shouldn't be. And we should be implementing desalination and water reclamation and water generation and cutting-edge agricultural techniques such as urban agriculture. But yeah, I mean, this is all good stuff. This is the stuff that should be going on in the United States. Where is it going on? A little town in South Africa. A little town that is a reservation for the Afrikaner people. Or the Afrikaans people. I think it's Afrikaner. Maybe Afrikaans is the language in Africa. I don't know.
It gives life to the place, doesn't it? If you look at an aerial photo of Orania, you'd be surprised. It looks like an oasis. And of course, a lot of people are going for solar power. We've got our own solar. Notice that. We've got our...
Because it is an oasis. It's an oasis of the original South Africa, back when South Africa was one of the most productive countries in the world. It's a little harken back to the days when South Africa was a productive country. You know what I mean?
Own solar farm at this stage, so that's going to do extremely well. By next year, we'll be independent. We won't need Eskom anymore.
And Henny, when you arrived here, how many people lived here?
There was about, I think, 860.
When you arrived here?
Yes, when I arrived, well, 16 years ago.
Okay, 16 years ago. And now there's close to 3,000.
Yeah, it could be over. It could actually be over. I know that
beautiful.
My friend, the doctor at the hospital, he's got his patient files there, or his family files, and that exceeds 3,200 family files. So that tells you there's definitely a lot more than 3,000 people in Orania at this stage.
Yeah, but I suppose you can't always control it, can you? Because people come and live with relatives and so.
No. They can't just come and live here with relatives. They still have to go through the process.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why we have this little guy that rolls up his sleeves, I don't know whether you know that. That's to tell everybody that we do our own work.
See, people were saying white Juchi when, white Juchi when, white Juchi now, and white Juchi in the past. White Juchi in the past, present, and future. Okay, Juchi is the concept of the DPRK self-reliance. Okay, well, white Juchi now, but white Juchi looks different than Korean Juchi.
Do not have anybody else do our work, whether it's nice work or not. We do all the work ourselves. But the big reason why we are here, it's not because we feel anybody's inferior or different. People are different. Different races are different.
Yes.
But the reason why we are here, because we are trying to protect our own heritage, our own. Feel anybody's inferior or different. People are different. Different races are different.
Yes.
But the reason why we are here, because we are trying to protect our own heritage, our own culture. Feel anybody's inferior or different. People are different. Different races are different.
Yes.
But the reason why we are here, because we are trying to protect our own heritage, our own culture. Because we are trying to protect our own heritage, our own culture. Because we are trying to protect our own heritage, our own culture, our language, which has been attacked just about everywhere. And but we do build very good relations.
Now take note, that's like how American English is being attacked in the United States of America and the school systems and etc. Now moving on.
So here is something you don't see in South Africa, but you will see in Orania. You see a bicycle. Notice, it has no chain whatsoever.
Think about that. Think about anywhere in the United States. Can you really leave a bicycle unattended anywhere in the United States? I know you can't where I live anymore without it getting stolen or vandalized, etc.
South Africa, but you will see in Orania. You see a bicycle. Notice, it has no chain whatsoever. it is, I could steal it right now if I wanted to, which I won't.
To be honest, you have a difficult time leaving a car unattended in the suburb that I live in right now.
But where else do you see that? A bicycle with no chain whatsoever. Just a question really, when you say that everyone does their own work, is there a duty imposed on Iranians to fix the town or something like that?
Well, let me put it this way. We don't have anybody else do our dirty work for us. We don't have anybody else do our dirty work for us. We don't have anybody else do our dirty work for us. If we have to, we built a brand new sewage farm. We built a brand new sewage farm.
Yes.
We did it ourselves with our own capital. Our own capital. Our own capital. Our own capital.
Now, the reason I'm doing that is because if you remember, the black Africans that were moved off of this land during the apartheid regime, if you remember the last video, they were given newly built homes. These people have to do their own quote-unquote dirty work. They had to build their own micronation, their own town, and not with anyone else's capital, with their own capital that they have to generate from the work of their own hands. This is true blood and soil mentality here. This is white Juchi.
We have a municipality that was given to us by the High Court. And it's the only municipality in South Africa that doesn't receive a cent from the that doesn't receive a cent from the government. That doesn't receive a cent from the government. That doesn't receive a cent from the government. Okay? So they have to rely on the levies of all the owners of properties in Orania to survive. And they do it pretty well. We have very good services. You can drink the water from our taps that gets purified by ourselves. We've got this brand new sewage farm which has been built.
Again, we have water that you can't drink in a lot of the United States, but yet in Orania you can drink the water. Can't drink the water in Flint, Michigan, but you can drink the water in Orania.
And it works extremely well. That can accommodate the next 15,000 people, by the way.
Okay.
And of course the same thing with the power. I'm glad to be here, to be honest. There's no crime here. There's no crime here. There's no crime here. There's no crime here. Look how people can just walk the streets. No fear.
And how do you cultivate the trust amongst the residents of Orania? I mean, I know that there are requirements to get in, and is that where you can determine if someone is worthy, so to speak?
You can determine it to a big extent. We also have a police record of everybody and make sure that people don't come here for the wrong reasons. We just want to make sure you know why you're here, and you must help to at least build the community, and there's a lot of community services to a big extent as well.
So what do you really say about Orania? There is this unrelenting optimism about what they are building, and I think that is the future of South Africa. Stop thinking, and I think that is the future of South Africa. Future of South Africa. Future of South Africa. Stop thinking about the macro topics, focus on the micro ones. About the macro topics, focus on the micro ones, like building your very own Orania.
Moving on. So I wanted to quickly go over who the coloreds are in South Africa. So the coloreds are essentially a genetic clustering of South African coloreds in 5 source populations, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The Cape colored community is predominantly descended from numerous interracial sexual unions, primarily between Western European men and Kuzian or mixed-race women in Cape Colony. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Zimbabwe coloreds are descended from Shona, blah, 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 Afrikaner settlers. My point is they are a racially mixed people, and they are part of the African diaspora, but moving. So this is about the genetic ancestry of African Americans, Latinos, and European Americans across the United States. So I'm going to skip to whites because that's really all I'm worried about in this video. So the frequency of Native American haplogroups in European Americans and African Americans correlate with our estimates of genome-wide ancestry in European Americans, meaning white Americans and African Americans, and are found in appreciable fractions of individuals who are estimated to carry Native American ancestry. The frequency of haplogroups shown discussion. Selection of populations, pattern populations, ancestry of self-reported African Americans. Again, let me move on. So the estimated rates of non-European ancestry in European Americans suggest that more than 6 million Americans who self-identify as European, meaning white, might carry African ancestry. Likewise, as many as 5 million Americans who self-identify as European might have at least 1% Native American ancestry. So remember, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot, because you have to remember, the human species differentiates from chimpanzees by less than 1% genetically. So 1% is a big difference, okay? So what I want you to understand here is 1% is enough to differentiate the white American population from our European forebears, plus the amalgamation of the various European peoples from Southern Europe, Northern Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, okay, all these different people, Romani people, etc. Regional differences in European subpopulation ancestry across states reflect known major historical migrations from Europe. Inferred British-Irish ancestry is found in European Americans from all states, meaning, of course, we used to be a British colony, at mean proportions of more than 20% and represents a majority of ancestry in states such as, so British people, meaning the Celtic and Anglo-Saxons, make up the majority of the genetic population in such states as Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee. I like saying Arkansas. It's Arkansas, I know. These states are similarly highlighted in the map of self-reported American ethnicity. So yes, there's self-reported American ethnicity, okay, which might reflect regions with lower subsequent migration from other parts of Europe. Inferred Eastern European ancestry is found at its highest levels in Illinois, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, potentially stemming from immigration during the 19th and early 20th centuries, settling in metropolitan areas in the Northeast and Midwest. Inferred Iberian, meaning Spanish ancestry, found overall at lower mean proportions, still represent a measurable ancestry component in Florida, Louisiana, California, and Nevada, and might point to early Spanish rule and colonization of the Americas. Scandinavian ancestry in European Americans is highly localized, so it's not very diverse. Most states show only trace mean proportions of Scandinavian ancestry, but it comprises a significant proportion, upwards of 10% of ancestry in European Americans from Minnesota and the Dakotas. The distributions of the European subpopulation ancestries in European Americans illustrate the distribution of within European ancestry is not homogeneous among individuals from different states and instead reflects differences in population migrations and settlement patterns across the U.S. So remember what I said. Different regions of the United States are biologically, culturally, and hence ethnically different from one another, and that's why we would require different reservations self-governed. So sex bias and ancestry contributions. They find evidence that sex-biased admixture proposals are widespread in U.S. history. In European Americans, as well as in African American and Latino populations, estimates of proportions of males and females from each ancestral population suggest that under a single demographic model of admixture, European Americans might have 10 times as many female Native American ancestors. So this has to do with white men marrying Native American women, okay, as male, because obviously Native American women look good. And African Americans might have 4 times as many female Native American ancestors as male. So keep that in mind. European Americans might have, so there might be, so there are 10 times as many female Native American ancestors as male, and African Americans might have 4 times as many female Native American ancestors as male. Robust estimates of African and Native American ancestry. Okay, wait, hold on. Moving on to the Caucasians. So this work demonstrates the legacy of population migration and interactions over the last several hundred years is visible in the genetic ancestry of modern individuals living in the United States. Blah, blah, blah. Though the majority of European Americans in our study did not carry Native American or African ancestry, even a small proportion of this large population that carry non-European ancestry translates into millions of European Americans who carry African American and Native American ancestry. Their results suggest that the early U.S. history, beginning in the 17th century, might have been a time of many population interactions. So this is not new. The commingling is not new. This goes back to the 17th century, 12 generations ago. This makes it uniquely American. This differentiates it from our European forebears. Large sample sizes, high-density genotype data, and accurate and robust local ancestry estimates allowed us to discern subtle differences in genetic ancestry in spite of present-day high mobility of individuals. The genetic ancestry of present-day individuals recapitulates historical migration events. Our findings can inform medical genetic studies, introgressed Native American and African American haplotypes, and in European Americans might have implications for studies of complex diseases, especially for diseases that vary in prevalence among ancestral populations. Something you're not supposed to acknowledge these days, remember? So, moving on. So, improved race and ethnicity measures reveal U.S. population is much more multiracial. Now, this is a basis for a need for reservations to preserve the unique white American culture and genetic lineages, okay? So people have a right to self-determination according to the United Nations, and this needs to be exercised, okay? And just like Native Americans, the descendants of our forebears, the people that founded this republic, should be able to have a place to explore their own self-determination. So the 2020 census used the required 2 separate blah blah blah, 1 ray blah blah blah, building up on yada yada. Improvements and changes enabled a more thorough and accurate depiction of how people self-identify, yielding a more accurate portrait of how people report their Hispanic origin and race within the context of a 2-question format. Okay, they also confident that so the white population remained the largest race or ethnicity in the United States. The multiracial population has changed considerably. It was measured at 9 million people in 2010 and is now 33.8 million. All of the race alone or in combination groups experienced increases to the some other race, blah, 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 blah. The Hispanic or Latino population, which includes people of any race, was 62.1 million in 2020. The Hispanic or Latino population grew by 23%. Okay, moving on. When we get back, I'm going to start talking about other micronations, starting with the communist state of Transnistria in Moldova, which claims to be it's an independent micronation. And I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to show a video about Transnistria. And that's all for now.